In the city's underbelly, Lucien DeLuca was not described as a man. He was described as an outcome. When a debt disappeared, when a witness changed their story, when a rival suddenly sold territory and fled the country without explanation, people didn't ask who did it. They asked quietly if DeLuca had noticed. Lucien did not run New York the way loud men imagined power should look. He didn't flood streets with gunfire. He didn't threaten on social media. He didn't send messages that begged to be seen. He corrected the world in silence. Those who worked beneath him feared him in a particular way, the kind of fear that existed even when he spoke gently, because Lucien's cruelty wasn't emotional. It was clean, measured, almost polite. He had learned that as a boy. His father, Adriano DeLuca, had once believed mercy was strength. He had spared a man who begged at their dining table, tears falling onto linen like confession. 3 weeks later, Lucien's mother died for it. Not in a war, not in a firefight. In a quiet hallway, in a home that had been safe until mercy opened the door. Lucien never argued with his father about it. He never dishonored him publicly. He wore the DeLuca name like armor. But inside, the lesson hardened into a law. Mercy was weakness. Weakness invited loss. Loss demanded punishment. At 2:06 a.m., in a warehouse near the docks, a man who had stolen from DeLuca shipments sat tied to a chair, sobbing softly into his own shirt. Lucien stood in front of him, immaculate in a black suit, hands relaxed at his sides. "I didn't mean it, boss," the man pleaded. "My daughter, she's sick. I just needed—" Lucien tilted his head slightly, as if listening to music. "You love her," Lucien said calmly. "Yes," the man choked. Lucien's voice stayed gentle. "Then understand this. Love is possession. It is protection. It is a boundary." He leaned in, saw close enough for the man to smell his cologne. Expensive, restrained, almost intimate. "And you crossed mine." Lucien straightened and nodded once. The shot came from behind the chair. The man's body jerked, then went still. Lucien didn't flinch. He adjusted his cuff as if the sound had been a door closing. "Send his family money," he told Matteo Bianchi. "They will not starve." Matteo blinked once. "After this?" Lucien's gaze was steady. "I don't punish the innocent." He turned toward the exit, his footsteps unhurried. Outside, the river air cut cold against the city's lights. Lucien inhaled as if the night belonged to him. "Romano is moving," Matteo said, catching up. A word surfaced in chatter. Lucien didn't slow. "Say it." "The vault." Lucien's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "Then it's time." He looked out at the skyline, expression disturbingly calm. "Find Elena Rossi," he said. "If she unlocks what I think she unlocks, she will be brought under my protection." Matteo hesitated. Protection or possession? Lucien did not answer. He didn't need to. In Lucien DeLuca's world, the difference was thin enough to bleed through. Elena Rossi learned early that silence could be louder than sirens. Her father had never told her what he truly did. He only taught her what not to do. Never speak names in public. Never sign what you didn't understand. Or never assume a closed door meant safety. When she was 12, she once asked why he looked over his shoulder even in their own kitchen. He had smiled thinly and said, "Because the past follows quietly." Now, at 26, Elena sat alone under fluorescent office light, staring at numbers that didn't belong together. Ardent Financial Compliance was not a glamorous firm. It was a place where ambition went to die politely. Yet on Monday morning, the company was acquired so quickly, the staff didn't even have time to gossip properly. By lunch, half the executives were transitioning. By evening, ownership had been transferred through a web of subsidiaries too clean to be innocent. Elena didn't panic. She opened the acquisition filings and traced the route. DeLuca Holdings. The name landed like cold water. Even people who didn't know the underworld knew that name carried a shadow behind its shine. Real estate, philanthropy, luxury. Yes, but also, wait. At 6:40 p.m., Elena was called into a conference room and offered a promotion that made no sense. Director of Strategic Risk Assessment. More access, more authority, more visibility. That last part was the trap. Elena accepted without gratitude. She asked for archived maritime insurance records tied to Romano Freight subsidiaries, dating back 15 years. The room went still, the new executives exchanging quick glances as if she had spoken a password. At 6:42 p.m., her clearance expanded, instantly. No approvals, no delays. Elena stared at the screen a long moment, her throat tightening, not with fear, but recognition. Someone had been waiting for her to look, and whoever owned this company now wanted her to find something she hadn't known existed. Lucien did not call Elena. He did not text her. He did not send flowers, invitations, or polite introductions that pretended this was normal. He set gravity in motion and watched what fell into place. For from DeLuca Tower, Lucien read Elena's access requests in real time on a secure device Matteo held beside him. She wasn't rifling through random records. She went straight to maritime rerouting, offshore insurance adjustments, and dormant escrow structures connected to Romano Logistics. Most people didn't even know what those documents were. Elena requested them like she had grown up hearing their names. "She's moving too clean," Matteo said. Lucien's expression remained calm, because she's not new to this. She's only new to knowing it. At 9:18 p.m., Elena opened a ledger marked obsolete, one that had not been accessed in 11 years. And there it was. A routing authorization chain linked to a contingency structure, dormant, encrypted, buried beneath layers of legal camouflage, a vault that didn't officially exist. Lucien watched the screen reflect in the glass window. "You're sure?" Matteo asked. Lucien didn't answer immediately. He thought of his mother's blood in a hallway, the way mercy had opened a door that never closed again. "The vault was Romano's insurance," Lucien said softly. "If it's waking up, it means Romano expects war." "And Elena?" Lucien's voice dropped into something quieter. "Elena is the key he thought he hid." Matteo hesitated. "Should we pull her out?" Lucien turned, eyes disturbingly calm. "No. We move her closer. Why not take her now?" Lucien's gaze held, unblinking. "Because I don't want her frightened. I want her aware." He paused, then added with controlled certainty, "Awareness is the first form of loyalty." Outside, the city glittered. Inside, Lucien made a decision that felt almost gentle, and that was what made it dangerous. The Palazzo d'Oro Charity Gala existed for two reasons: image and access. Lucien attended for access. He arrived at 8:11 p.m., unhurried, dressed in black, tailored so sharply it looked like a warning. His presence changed the room without announcement. Conversations shifted. Laughs softened. Men who had never been afraid of police suddenly remembered their posture. Lucien moved like a man who didn't have to prove anything. From the mezzanine, he watched the floor the way a hunter watched a field. Patient, methodical, already deciding. Elena Rossi entered at 8:17 p.m. She wore black, not for attention but for control. The dress was elegant, minimal, expensive in a way that suggested taste rather than desperation. Her hair was pinned back. Her eyes moved across the room like she was counting exits. Not a socialite, not prey. Something else. Lucien's gaze fixed on her as if she had been summoned. Matteo's voice was low. "Not invited through our channels." "Then someone placed her," Lucien murmured. Below, Elena paused near the champagne table and declined a glass with a slight shake of her head. A man approached her too quickly, Romano soldier by posture, pretending to be a donor by suit. Elena gave him a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. Lucien watched her handle him with calm precision. No flirtation, no fear, no apology. Lucien felt the smallest pulse of approval. She was not naive. Good. When Elena glanced upward, her eyes caught Lucien's. The moment stretched. Lucien did not smile. Elena did not look away. Matteo exhaled once. She saw you. Lucien's voice was almost tender. Not a yes. He paused, then gave the only order that mattered. Make sure she leaves with the feeling she was chosen. At 3:16 a.m., a DeLuca convoy near Newark went dark. No frantic calls, no screaming, no gunfire on the scanners. Just a quiet void that meant professionals had stepped in. When DeLuca response arrived, the trucks were untouched. The cargo remained. The drivers were alive, but shaken, eyes wide, mouths dry, unable to explain how quickly it happened. On the steel door of the lead truck, a word had been carved deep enough to scar metal. Vault. Lucien stood in the warehouse as the door was hauled in front of him. He ran his fingers over the carved letters without expression, as if reading Braille. Romano didn't steal. He signaled. Matteo entered behind him. Volkov intercepted chatter. Romano is coordinating with someone external. Lucien didn't turn. Volkov doesn't intercept without reason. They also mentioned Elena Rossi. Lucien's hand stopped. As leverage? Matteo asked. Lucien's gaze lifted slowly, calm so deep it felt unnatural. As a key. At 11:47 a.m., Elena received an anonymous message. Vaults demand blood. She didn't delete it. She saved it, then turned off her phone and sat very still, listening to the hum of her refrigerator like it was a countdown. Outside her building, DeLuca surveillance appeared in the shape of ordinary men, one reading a newspaper too long, one smoking without smoking, one walking a dog that never relieved itself. Protection disguised as coincidence. At 2:03 p.m., Lucien summoned Elena to his private office. When she entered, Lucien didn't offer her a seat. He didn't need to. There are forces measuring your value, he said calmly. Elena met his gaze. I noticed. You are safer within my perimeter. Is that protection? She asked evenly. Or control? Lucien stepped closer, his voice low and disturbingly steady. In my world, he said, they're the same thing. Elena didn't flinch, and in that moment, Lucien realized something that pleased him far more than fear ever could. She was not breaking. She was adapting. Lucien did not raise his voice when he was angry. He simplified. At 7:12 p.m., he summoned every DeLuca captain to the lower chamber beneath DeLuca Tower, a room built not for meetings, but for verdicts. Stone walls, no windows, one long table carved from black oak, no electronics allowed. Men who had killed without hesitation sat with straight backs and careful breathing. Lucien entered last. They stood. He did not acknowledge the gesture. The Newark convoy was touched, Lucien said calmly. The cargo was left. A word was carved. Silence. Vault, he continued. A ripple moved through the room, subtle, restrained. Lucien's eyes swept across them. Someone inside this network knew the routing, and someone believed my attention was elsewhere. He walked slowly along the table, hands clasped behind his back. When my father showed mercy, my mother died. No one moved. I do not repeat mistakes. He stopped behind one captain, Raphael Moretti, whose breathing had shifted just enough to be noticed. Lucien leaned down slightly. Tell me, he said softly, why your cousin was seen meeting Romano's lieutenant 2 days ago. Moretti's face drained. It wasn't. Lucien raised a single finger. Nico Caruso stepped forward without instruction and placed a blade on the table, Lucien did not touch it. "Confess," Lucien said gently, "or make me correct you publicly." Moretti broke in 30 seconds. Lucien nodded once. He didn't order immediate death. He ordered something worse. "Remove him from the table," Lucien said. "He will watch what loyalty looks like." Moretti was dragged out alive. Lucien turned back to the captains. "In my house," he said calmly, "weakness does not infect. It is excised." They nodded. They always nodded. Elena did not tell anyone about the message. She went to work the next morning, as if nothing had shifted, though her pulse had been steady and alert all night. She opened the vault files again, this time deeper. The contingency structure wasn't just money, it was a failsafe, a dormant transfer protocol tied to layered authorizations, one of which carried her father's encrypted signature. But there was something else, a secondary verification key that linked to her. Elena leaned back slowly. Her father had not just managed funds, he had embedded her into them. Across the city, Lucien received confirmation from Volkov intelligence that Romano was preparing to activate dormant offshore movements. "Romano thinks she doesn't know," Matteo said. Lucien's eyes darkened. "He underestimates her." "And you?" Lucien didn't answer immediately. He thought of the way Elena had held his gaze in the parking structure. No fear, no trembling. "I don't underestimate what belongs in my orbit," he said finally. That evening, Elena left the office and felt it. Not eyes. Weight. The subtle awareness that her movements mattered to someone unseen. When she reached her apartment door, she found a single black envelope slipped beneath it. Inside was a photograph, taken from above. The gala. Lucien on the mezzanine, watching her. No threat written. No words needed. Elena stared at the image a long moment, then folded it carefully, and if this was a war, she would not enter it blind. And if Lucien DeLuca thought she was only a key, he was about to learn she could also turn the lock. Vittorio Romano did not frighten easily, but Lucien DeLuca unsettled him. They met again, this time in a private cigar lounge. No one else was allowed to enter while they spoke. No guards in sight, though both men knew 20 stood nearby. Romano lit his cigar slowly. "You've become aggressive," he observed. Lucien's expression remained composed. "I've become efficient." Romano exhaled smoke. "The girl." Lucien's gaze didn't flicker. "What about her?" "She's not yours." Lucien tilted his head slightly. "That depends." Romano's jaw tightened. "Her father made agreements." "Yes," Lucien replied softly. "He did. And some agreements survive beyond the man." Lucien leaned forward, voice disturbingly calm. "Your mistake," he said, "was believing you could bury something and no one would dig." Romano's eyes sharpened. "So she doesn't understand what she carries." Lucien's lips curved faintly. "She will." Romano set the cigar down. "Stay away from her." Lucien stood smoothly, adjusting his cuff. "You confuse me with my father," he said quietly. Romano froze. Lucien's gaze turned cold as winter stone. "I don't show mercy to protect what is mine." He left without another word. Romano understood something then that unsettled him deeply. Lucien's interest in Elena was no longer strategic. It was personal. And men like Lucien did not compete. They eliminated. The attempt came at 11:28 p.m. Elena was walking back from a late meeting when the black SUV slowed too deliberately beside her. The window rolled down. She didn't scream. She calculated. The man inside smiled too politely. "Elena Rossi?" he asked. She didn't answer. 2 doors opened. Before hands could reach her, headlights flared violently from the opposite direction. A second vehicle cut across the street with surgical precision. 3 shots rang out. Not chaotic. Precise. The SUV driver slumped forward. The 2 men dropped before their feet touched pavement. Elena stood frozen for exactly 2 seconds. Then she turned. Lucien stepped out of the second car, as if arriving for dinner. He wasn't breathless. He wasn't angry. He was disturbingly calm. "Are you injured?" he asked. "No." He nodded once. The bodies were already being handled by men who moved like shadows. "You were followed from your office," Lucien said. "I noticed," she replied evenly. His eyes held hers. "You are no longer adjacent to this war," he said quietly. "You are inside it." Elena didn't look at the blood. "Then tell me what I am." Lucien stepped closer, voice low enough that the night seemed to lean in. "You," he said, "are the reason they are nervous. Not comfort. Not reassurance. Truth." By morning, the attempted abduction did not exist. No police report. No headlines. No witnesses willing to remember. Lucien stood in his office while Matteo delivered confirmation. "Romano denies involvement." "Of course he does. Volkov believes a third faction is probing the vault." Lucien's expression hardened slightly. "A hidden hand?" "Yes." Lucien looked out at the skyline. War was no longer hypothetical, and Elena was no longer theoretical leverage. She was a target, which meant something else entirely. At noon, Elena arrived at DeLuca Tower uninvited. Security didn't stop her. They never would. She walked into Lucien's office without knocking. "You could have told me," she said calmly. "I could have," Lucien replied. "Why didn't you?" Lucien studied her face carefully. "Because I needed to see if you would run." "And?" "You didn't." Elena stepped closer. "You think this is possession," she said. Lucien didn't deny it. "It is." She searched his expression for softness and found none. "You don't love," she said quietly. Lucien's gaze didn't waver. "I don't lose." Silence settled between them, thick and electric. Elena finally understood something essential. Lucien DeLuca would burn cities before surrendering what he claimed. The terrifying part? She wasn't sure she wanted him to. The underworld did not ask whether Lucien DeLuca would retaliate. It asked how many would disappear when he did. By dusk, 3 warehouses linked indirectly to Romano Logistics suffered quiet electrical failures. Insurance files vanished. 2 accountants resigned abruptly and boarded flights that would never land where their families expected. Lucien did not announce retaliation. He corrected imbalance. Matteo stood beside him in the lower chamber. "Romano denies the attempt." Lucien poured himself a measured glass of scotch. "Denial is the first language of guilt." "And if it wasn't him?" Lucien's expression remained disturbingly calm. "Then someone wants us to believe it was." He set the glass down untouched. Elena?" "She went to work," Matteo replied, as if nothing happened. A faint shift crossed Lucien's eyes. Good. He did not want fragility. He wanted steel. Across the city, Elena opened the vault structure again. This time, she noticed a dormant secondary trigger, an authorization protocol that required dual recognition. One linked to Romano's past, the other to her. Her pulse slowed. The vault was not money. It was leverage, designed to detonate alliances. And someone had positioned her at the center long before she understood it. Elena leaned back and whispered to the empty office. "What did you build, Papa?" In DeLuca Tower, Lucien stared at the skyline. War was coming. He would not hesitate. He never did. Vittorio Romano did not sleep easily that night. He summoned his lieutenants in a private estate outside the city, stone walls echoing with the quiet arrogance of inherited power. "Elena Rossi," he said, voice measured. She must be contained. One lieutenant hesitated. "DeLuca has placed protection." Romano's jaw tightened. Protection can be pierced. But he knew something else. Lucien did not forgive. If Romano moved openly, Lucien would escalate without warning. And escalation meant graves. Meanwhile, Elena received another message. Not anonymous this time. A bank notification. A dormant trust had shifted status. She logged into the secure portal and stared. The contingency fund was unlocking in phases, so her biometric confirmation was required. Her father hadn't just hidden money, he had hidden control. Lucien's phone vibrated in his office. Matteo's voice was tight. "Romano has activated offshore movement. He thinks the vault will stabilize him." Lucien smiled faintly. "He's too late." "You're certain?" Lucien turned toward the window. Elena understands more than he thinks. And if she sides with him? Lucien's gaze darkened. She won't. Confidence or possession? Perhaps both. Because Lucien DeLuca did not merely anticipate loyalty, he cultivated inevitability. Elena requested a meeting, not through formal channels. She walked into DeLuca Tower as if it were already familiar. Security stepped aside without instruction. Lucien waited in his office, composed as ever. She placed a tablet on his desk. "The vault requires my authorization." Lucien studied her carefully. "And?" "It was structured to destabilize whoever controls it last." Lucien's interest sharpened. "A mutual destruction clause." "Yes." Silence settled. "Elena," he said quietly, "your father was smarter than Romano." "And you?" she asked. Lucien stepped closer. "I'm not sentimental." She held his gaze. "If I trigger it, alliances collapse." "Yes, and people die." Lucien did not soften. "They would die anyway." Elena exhaled slowly. "You don't believe in alternatives." "I believe in outcomes." She studied him. This man who carried brutality like etiquette. You think I belong inside your perimeter?" "I know you do." "Why?" Lucien's voice lowered. "Because if you stand alone, they will tear you apart." Elena didn't flinch. "And if I stand with you?" Lucien's eyes darkened. "They will fear you." It wasn't a promise of safety. It was an offer of power. Volkov entered the war without warning. At 2:48 a.m., a DeLuca port office was torched. Not destroyed, just marked. A single symbol sprayed across the concrete wall. A wolf's head. Matteo delivered the report as Lucien stood perfectly still. "Volkov wants in," Matteo said. Lucien's lips curved faintly. "He wants leverage. Romano is maneuvering offshore. Volkov is testing us. And Elena is the hinge." Lucien nodded once. "Then we stop reacting." "And start?" Lucien turned slowly. "Controlling." He ordered an emergency summit. DeLuca captains only. The message was simple. No independent moves. No negotiations. No fear. At the same time, he moved Elena into a secured penthouse under DeLuca protection, not by force, by persuasion, wrapped in inevitability. When she arrived, she walked through the space calmly. "You relocated me," she observed. "Yes." Without asking, Lucien met her eyes. "I don't ask when it concerns survival." She stepped closer. "You're not afraid they'll kill me?" Lucien's expression was unreadable. "I'm afraid they'll try." The difference mattered. And for the first time, Elena felt something dangerous beneath his calm. Not fear. Fury waiting. Romano made his move publicly. At a high-profile charity auction, he announced a new logistics partnership, one that required activation of dormant escrow structures. The vault. The room applauded. Lucien watched from a private balcony, eyes cool. "He's forcing Elena's hand," Matteo said. "Yes. And if she refuses?" Lucien's jaw tightened slightly. "She won't." Elena stood on the main floor, invitation in hand, her eyes scanning the crowd. Romano approached her personally. "Your father trusted me," he said smoothly. "My father trusted few people," she replied. Romano smiled thinly. "Activate the structure, stabilize the future." Elena glanced upward. Lucien stood above, silent, watching. 2 kings. 1 key. Elena's pulse remained steady. She understood now. This was not about money. It was about who controlled the next era of power. Romano leaned closer. Choose wisely. Elena straightened. One I always do. Above, Lucien's gaze burned with controlled intensity. Love was possession, and he had already decided Elena Rossi would not be taken. She would be claimed. The auction ended in applause. The war began in silence. At 10:42 p.m., Elena stood alone on the balcony of the penthouse Lucien had relocated her to. The city stretched beneath her like a map of future casualties. She had not activated the vault. Not yet. Romano believed pressure would force her hand. Lucien believed inevitability would. Both men were wrong about one thing. Elena had begun calculating beyond them. Inside, Lucien removed his cufflinks with deliberate calm. You didn't move, Matteo observed quietly. No. Romano expected panic. Lucien's voice was steady. Romano confuses fear with influence. Matteo hesitated. And Elena? Lucien paused. She is not afraid. Across the river, Romano's private security convoy shifted routes twice within 10 minutes. Volkov's scouts tracked both families like wolves circling an exposed artery. At 12:06 a.m., Elena's phone vibrated again. This time, a coded prompt. Vault authorization pending. She stared at the biometric screen. Her thumb hovered, then lowered. She did not activate. She did not reject. She let it linger. Control, she realized, was not about speed. It was about timing. And for the first time, Lucien felt something unfamiliar. Not doubt. Anticipation. Because the girl he intended to protect had begun playing the board. The third faction revealed itself through blood. At 3:33 a.m., a Volkov lieutenant was found executed in his own car, throat cut, hands placed calmly in his lap. A DeLuca coin rested on his chest. Lucien did not order it. Matteo confirmed as much. Someone wants Volkov blaming you. Lucien's gaze sharpened. And Romano? He denies involvement. Lucien leaned back, disturbingly calm. Good. Good? Matteo asked. Lucien's voice lowered. If neither of us ordered it, then someone is accelerating war. And Elena? Lucien's eyes flickered toward the city. She becomes more valuable by the hour. At dawn, Elena received encrypted access logs. The vault had been pinged remotely from an unknown external server. Someone was attempting forced activation. Her jaw tightened. This wasn't about DeLuca or Romano. This was about control of the failsafe. She walked into Lucien's office unannounced. But they're trying to force it, she said without preamble. Lucien studied her face. You understand what that means? Yes. It means whoever succeeds owns the aftermath. Lucien stepped closer, voice calm but lethal. Then we make sure no one succeeds without us. Elena's eyes held his. Not without me, she corrected. Lucien's lips curved faintly. Possession was evolving into partnership. Volkov requested a meeting, neutral ground, an abandoned opera house, old marble, broken chandeliers, a dust layered thick like forgotten applause. Lucien arrived first. He did not sit. Volkov entered alone, tall and silent, eyes like winter steel. You framed me, Volkov said evenly. Lucien's expression remained unreadable. If I had framed you, you would not be alive to discuss it. Volkov studied him. The girl. Lucien did not blink. She destabilizes balance. She reveals weakness, Lucien corrected. Volkov's gaze sharpened. Romano believes he controls her. He doesn't. And you? Lucien's voice dropped. I don't control her. Volkov raised an eyebrow. I choose her. Silence settled like frost. Volkov nodded slowly. There is a third hand, Lucien inclined his head. I know. Find it, Volkov said, before it finds us. Lucien extended no handshake. Agreed. As he walked out, Matteo murmured, temporary alliance? Lucien's answer was simple. Temporary necessity. Back at the penthouse, Elena ran deeper forensic traces on the forced vault access. The IP origin resolved into something unexpected. A holding company tied loosely to Adriano DeLuca's final year, Lucien's father. Elena stared at the screen. The past was not buried. It was waking up. Lucien did not react immediately when Elena showed him the trace. He stood very still. Too still. My father dissolved that entity before he died, he said quietly. Eliminated on paper, Elena replied. Lucien's jaw tightened subtly. You're suggesting the third hand is internal. Yes, Matteo absorbed the implication. Someone inside DeLuca. Lucien's voice dropped to something dangerously calm. Then someone dies tonight. He called an emergency internal audit. No warnings, no announcements. Every captain's accounts were frozen simultaneously. Within 2 hours, a pattern emerged. Rafael Moretti's cousin, the same bloodline Lucien had spared from execution, but removed from power, had retained hidden access. Mercy. Lucien closed his eyes briefly, just once. When he opened them, they were colder. Bring him to the lower chamber. By midnight, the cousin knelt where Moretti once had. You were shown grace, Lucien said softly. The man sobbed. I never touched the vault. You touched my past. The room chilled. Lucien stepped closer. I do not forgive twice. The shot echoed. No theatrics, no rage, just correction. Afterward, Lucien stood alone. Elena entered quietly. You could have questioned him, she said. Lucien didn't turn. He already answered. You killed him because of your father. Lucien finally faced her. I killed him because weakness multiplies. Elena studied him carefully. You're afraid of repeating history. Lucien's expression remained unreadable. I don't repeat mistakes. But his silence lingered, and Elena saw it, the scar beneath the calm. The vault activation window reopened at 4:04 a.m. Simultaneously. 3 factions were attempting access: Romano, Volkov, and the unknown third network still alive. Elena stood in front of the biometric scanner. Lucien stood behind her, close, not touching. Once you trigger it, Lucien said quietly, there is no reversal. I know. It will collapse alliances. Yes. It will mark you. Elena turned slightly. I was marked the moment you noticed me. Lucien's eyes darkened. Possession flickered into something deeper. You can still walk away, he said, though his voice suggested he did not believe she would. Elena faced forward again. No, she said calmly. I can't. Her thumb pressed the scanner. Authorization accepted. Across the globe, dormant accounts shifted. Escrow structures rerouted. Romano's liquidity froze mid-transfer. Volkov's leverage dissolved. The third faction's forced access failed catastrophically. Within seconds, the balance of power flipped. Lucien watched the data cascade. A faint smile touched his lips. Not pride. Recognition. Elena Rossi had not simply unlocked the vault. She had detonated it precisely where she intended. Lucien leaned closer, voice low and disturbingly calm. They will fear you now. Elena did not smile. Good. Outside, the city felt the tremor. And for the first time, Lucien DeLuca understood something unsettling. He had not claimed Elena. He had awakened her. Romano did not shout when the vault collapsed. He went silent. And that frightened his men more than anger ever could. At 6:12 a.m., every Romano offshore structure tied to the contingency fund froze simultaneously. Credit lines evaporated. Liquidity vanished mid-transfer. 3 political alliances dissolved within hours. Romano stood in his private study, staring at the cascading notifications. "She triggered it," one lieutenant whispered. Romano's jaw tightened. "No," he said quietly. "She chose a side." Across the city, Lucien stood behind Elena in the DeLuca penthouse, watching financial markets ripple like disturbed water. "You understood the detonation clause," he said calmly. Elena didn't turn. "I understood the timing. You didn't warn me." "I didn't need to." Lucien studied her profile carefully. She had not asked permission. She had not hesitated. She had not sought protection. She had executed strategy. Matteo entered with urgency. "Romano is consolidating remaining assets. Volkov has gone dark." Lucien nodded once. Quote, "They will regroup." "And the third faction?" Lucien's eyes shifted toward Elena. "They just lost everything." He stepped closer, his voice disturbingly calm. "You've ended the balance that kept this city stable." Elena finally turned to him. "Stability was an illusion." Lucien held her gaze. For the first time in years, something stirred beneath his composure. Not fear. Respect. The retaliation came swiftly, but not from Romano. At 9:47 p.m., a DeLuca mid-level lieutenant was found dead in his apartment. No struggle, no forced entry. A single photograph lay on his chest. Elena at the gala. The third faction had shifted focus. Lucien studied the body without emotion. "They're isolating her," Matteo said. "No," Lucien corrected. "They're testing me." "Do we respond?" Lucien's gaze hardened. "We don't respond," Matteo frowned. "We ignore it?" Lucien's voice dropped. "We remove them." Within hours, a DeLuca intelligence traced the holding company to a private equity ghost firm operating out of Zurich, linked to a former DeLuca accountant who disappeared years ago after internal disputes with Adriano DeLuca. The past was not just waking, it was avenging. Elena stood in the doorway of Lucien's office as he reviewed the findings. "This is because your father spared someone," she said quietly. Lucien didn't deny it. He believed mercy preserved loyalty. "And you?" "I believe mercy invites repetition." Elena stepped closer. "If you kill every loose end, eventually you stand alone." Lucien's eyes were disturbingly calm. "Alone is safer." Elena didn't argue, but something in her expression shifted. She was beginning to understand the cost of loving a man who equated safety with isolation. Volkov broke his silence with a message delivered personally. A wooden box arrived at DeLuca Tower at dawn. Inside, the severed head of the Zurich intermediary. No note, no explanation, just resolution. Matteo exhaled slowly. Volkov eliminated the external threat. Lucien nodded once. He values equilibrium. "And you?" Lucien closed the box himself. "I value control." By afternoon, Romano requested a final private meeting. Lucien accepted. They met in a dim cathedral long closed to the public. Romano looked older. "You destabilized everything," Romano said. Lucien's expression did not shift. "You tried to leverage what wasn't yours. She's not yours either." Lucien's voice remained calm. "She chose." Romano studied him carefully. "You've changed." Lucien's gaze hardened slightly. "No. I corrected what my father left unfinished." Romano understood then. Lucien was not defending Elena because of strategy anymore. He was defending her because she represented something Adriano had lost. Control without mercy. Possession without apology. As Lucien walked away, Romano spoke quietly. "Be careful. Obsession clouds even calm men." Lucien did not look back. "I am never clouded." But even he felt the tremor beneath that certainty. The city settled into uneasy quiet. The vault had detonated alliances, but no open war erupted. Volkov withdrew. Romano consolidated what remained. The third faction was erased. Lucien stood alone in his office late that night. Elena entered without announcement. "You're thinking," she said. "Yes." "About?" Lucien turned toward her slowly. "My father." Elena waited. "He spared a man who begged," Lucien said calmly. "And my mother died because of it." Elena stepped closer. "You've never forgiven him." Lucien's jaw tightened faintly. "I don't forgive weakness." "And if he wasn't weak?" Lucien's gaze flickered. "What are you suggesting?" "That mercy isn't weakness," she said softly. "It's risk." Silence stretched. Lucien studied her as if she were an equation that refused to balance. "You think I should have spared them," he said. "I think you killed to prevent pain," Elena replied. "But pain doesn't disappear. It just waits." Lucien did not respond immediately. He had built his empire on certainty. Elena introduced ambiguity, and ambiguity was dangerous. But so was denying it. The final ripple came at sunrise. A coded message arrived at DeLuca Tower. Unknown origin. Vault Phase 2. Lucien's expression did not change as he read it. "Elena!" he called. She stepped into the room calmly. "There was always a second layer," she admitted. Lucien's gaze sharpened. "You knew." "I suspected. And you didn't tell me." Elena met his eyes steadily. "I needed to see if you trusted me without full control." Lucien stepped closer, voice disturbingly calm. "I don't surrender control." "I didn't ask you to." She held his gaze without fear. "I asked you to stand beside me." Silence filled the room. Lucien realized something that unsettled him more than war ever had. Elena was not inside his perimeter. She was reshaping it. "You believe love is possession," she said quietly. Lucien didn't deny it. "And I believe," she continued, "love is alignment." For the first time, Lucien did not have an immediate answer. Outside, the city glowed in fragile calm. Inside, a new balance formed. Not because Lucien claimed Elena, but because she had chosen to stand in the fire with him. And Lucien DeLuca, brutal and disturbingly calm, I'd understood something he had never allowed before. Possession was easy. Trust was war. Lucien did not react to Vault Phase 2. He analyzed it. At 6:18 a.m., every DeLuca secure channel lit with activity. Offshore nodes that should have gone dormant after Elena's detonation flickered back online. Controlled, not hijacked. Someone had anticipated Phase 1. Elena stood beside Lucien, tablet in hand. "My father designed redundancy," she said calmly. Phase 2 transfers ownership of the residual structure. "To whom?" Matteo asked. Elena's eyes did not leave the screen. "To the one who activates it under joint confirmation." Lucien understood instantly. Joint. Yes, Romano could not access it alone. Volkov had lost position. The third faction was dead. Phase 2 required 2 signatures, hers and Lucien's. Lucien studied her face carefully. "You knew this." "I suspected," she replied. "Oh, I needed to know if you would stand beside me when you weren't in control." Matteo stepped back, sensing the shift in air. Lucien moved closer to Elena, voice disturbingly calm. "You tested me. I measured you." Silence thickened between them. Then Lucien did something none of his captains had ever seen. He placed his hand over hers on the biometric scanner. "Activate it," he said. No hesitation. No command. Alignment. The scanner glowed. Authorization accepted. Across hidden financial arteries, dormant assets restructured into a new holding entity, owned equally. Not by DeLuca, not by Romano. By Elena Rossi and Lucien DeLuca. The balance of power did not tilt. It evolved. Romano felt it immediately. Phase 2 stripped him of his final contingency. Volkov received the same alert, and understood the implications. The city now had something unprecedented, a joint axis. Romano called Lucien within the hour. "You bound yourself to her," Romano said evenly. Yes. You've weakened yourself." Lucien's voice remained calm. "No. You trust too much." Lucien paused. "I don't trust blindly." "And yet you gave her access to everything." Lucien's gaze shifted toward Elena, who stood quietly across the room. "I gave her alignment." Romano exhaled slowly. "You've changed." Lucien's tone hardened slightly. "I corrected the past." Romano understood then that war would not win him this fight. Lucien had not merely claimed Elena. He had elevated her. And men like Romano did not fight couples. They waited. Meanwhile, Volkov sent a simple message: equilibrium restored. Lucien read it without expression. But Matteo noticed something rare. Lucien was not satisfied. He was steady. For the first time since his mother's death, control had not required isolation. It had required partnership. The city returned to its illusion of calm. Markets stabilized. Rumors faded. Graves were forgotten. Lucien stood on the penthouse balcony as dawn stretched across the skyline. Elena joined him, silent. "You don't regret it," she said. Lucien did not look at her immediately. "No." "Even if it makes you vulnerable?" Lucien turned slowly. "I don't believe in vulnerability." Elena studied him carefully. "You resent your father because he spared someone." "Yes. And because he did it alone." Lucien's jaw tightened faintly. Elena stepped closer. "You're not alone." Silence lingered. For years, Lucien had equated love with possession, control with safety, isolation with strength. But standing beside Elena, he felt something different. Not weakness, not softness. Alignment. "I will not hesitate," he said quietly. "I don't want you to," Elena replied. A faint smile touched Lucien's lips. Rare, controlled, dangerous. "Then understand this," he said. "If anyone touches you—" "They won't," she answered calmly. Because she now understood something equally dangerous. So Lucien DeLuca did not love gently. He loved decisively. Below them, the city glittered unaware. Above it, a new power structure stood balanced on trust, forged in war. Lucien rested his hand lightly at Elena's back, not gripping, not claiming. Present. And in that quiet moment, the underworld shifted permanently. The king had not softened. He had evolved. And the next war would not find him alone.